Come and do with me anything you want to. Anything, baby, just let me get next to you.
So this morning, I decided, instead of recording the way that I normally do, because I'm sure if you've been following me for the past couple of months, you'll see that I've been kind of fed up with the traditional method of filming my videos, and that I really like this old-fashioned way of doing it. I decided to film from my car what I would normally be filming in my house, but you see, this is a little bit more of a realistic way of portraying what I'm about to do, because I'm about to go into work in about a half an hour or so, and whenever I have the chance, or whenever I'm disciplined enough to give myself enough time before work to do something like this, I will read poetry, I will listen to music, I'll read a book, I'll just sit in my car and decompress before I have to go and face reality, I guess. And so today, I'm going to read you some poetry that I have been very, very excited about recently. I'm gonna move back a little bit. I am definitely a newcomer when it comes to poetry, but it doesn't mean that I can't appreciate it. Even at face value, I find so much beauty in it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to read you guys a few poems, and even just portions of poems that I really love, and I'm just going to talk about them and obsess over them with you guys. Yeah, this is what I'm doing right now, is my attempt to distance myself from reality as much as possible before I have to face it. And this is my attempt at remaining in the world of the fantasy for as long as I can. And to almost bring that, I guess, spell that casts onto me into the real world or whatever I'm doing, so that it's almost like a buffer or a layer of protection. So I'm just gonna get some things out. Some of this stuff is really new. I didn't even know about a lot of these poets beforehand. But I guess I'll start with the most probably recognizable poet and musician, Jim Morrison. And I have to thank my beloved friend and roommate for unintentionally getting me addicted to his prose. And so the first thing that I just want to read is the very last line from what is known as lyric verse. This is, I'm assuming, I don't listen to Jim Morrison's music. I've just read his poetry. But I would assume that these were lyrics for a song that actually came out. It's called Blood in the Streets, I believe. And the last sentence was the only thing that I really cared about in the entire song, I guess. And he just wrote, "Blood is the rose of mysterious union." And really, poets just find a way to say things in a more extravagant way, but also in a simpler way than the way that you would with normal language. When I think of union in this sentence, for example, I think of, let's say, the union between a knife and the skin. And then I think of rose. Rose almost has an entirely new definition, because in this way, rose is almost a verb, the way that a rose blooms, and how blood blooms whenever it, let's say, comes in contact with fabric. But it also, of course, is a romantic tendency here. There's a veiling of reality to an extent with this, to use the word rose, to use the word union. It's definitely more positive, especially when you know the rest of the poem or the rest of the lyrics. It's a very morbid poem, but I just thought that was beautiful. I almost want to get this tattooed somewhere on my body. But that's one little line just from one of Jim Morrison's poems. And then there's one called The Desert. It's very, very, very simple poem too, this one. The desert, roseate metallic blue and insect green, blank mirrors and pools of silver, a universe in one body. Now this immediately, this was a visual for me whenever I read this, because I have actually taken a picture of, not the desert, but the beach and the sand during a certain time of day. I believe it was closer towards sunset, and it really is this distinction between green or blue, like the shadows change color at that time of day. And then with the way that the sun is positioned in the sky, it's the same thing with these blank mirrors and pools of silver. It almost looks like water turns into a color like mercury or silver or chrome, and it's really quite beautiful. So this was very visual for me reading this. And then a universe in one body, couldn't tell you really what that says to me. Maybe the vastness of it, but I just love the way that a universe in one body sounds, of course. Like I said, I'm a newcomer, so things in poetry can seem very surface level for me. But I thought this was beautiful visually. To know exactly the colors he was talking about, what he's talking about, the shadows and the pools of silver, mirrors. Because nothing is reflected in them because they're far away. It's a mirage of the atmosphere. So I thought those two were really beautiful. I have another one in here, but I can save that for another time. This book, though, this was really interesting. I got this book of poems by Jack Gilbert from one of those community free libraries. They're like these small little almost tree houses for books, little bird houses for books. And you take a book and you leave a book, right? And so I was looking through that. I was just on a walk and I saw one of them, and there was nothing I wanted, and then all of a sudden, because I'm a visual person, I chose this book because I liked the cover and I liked the typography. I'm that kind of person. I believe somehow that the cover does say a lot about the contents, or that you can judge a book by its cover. And I was certainly correct with this book. I love probably every single poem in here. Even coming from somebody that doesn't know anything about poetry, I guess I'm just attracted to the way that Jack Gilbert writes. I believe from my research he is considered a beat poet. And I'm going to read to you the White Heart of God after I have a little bit of this. Gotta love my drugs in the morning. The snow falling around the man in the naked woods is like the ash of heaven, ash from the cool fire of God's mother of pearl, moon-stately heart. Sympathetic but not merciful, his strictness parses us. The discomfort of living this way, without birds, among maples, without leaves, makes death in the world visible. Not the harshness, but the way this world can be known by pushing back against it, and feeling something pushing back. The whiteness of the winter married to this river makes the water look black. The water actually is the color of giant mirrors set along the marble corridors of the spirit. The mirrors empty of everything. The man is doing the year's accounts, finding the balance, trying to estimate how much he has been translated. For it does translate him, well or poorly, as the woods are translated by the seasons. He is searching for a baseline of the Lord. He searches like the blind man going forward with a hand stretched out in front, as the truck driver ice fishing on the big pond tries to learn from his line what is down there. The man attends to any signal that might announce Jesus. He hopes for even the faintest evidence, the presence of the Lord's least abundance. He measures with tenderness, afraid to find a heart more classical than ripe, hoping for honey, for love's alembic. Now, what draws me to this poem is not the religious undertone at all, or the religious subject, I guess, but I really, really enjoy the first part of it. I think what draws me to poetry is especially poets that use words in a very floral way, use words probably not intentionally, but that so many poems are more appealing to listen to than to actually know what they represent and what they mean. And this is one of those poems for me. Whenever I read about the whiteness of the winter married to this river making the water look black, the color of giant mirrors set along the marble corridors of the spirit, the mirrors empty of everything. That's when I fell in love with the poem immediately. Not even because of what that means or what it has to do with the rest of the poem, but the way that it's almost what some people, I guess some critics would call the poetry and certain poets and writers, the prose of those people from, let's say, the 1890s, they would call literary jewelry. And it would mean that the words that were used to create a sentence or to evoke any kind of emotion or feeling, the words used and how they were used was more important than the actual meaning. And so when I think about certain words that are strung together and that they just sound nice, like they're friends or that they're acquaintances, like that they are married together in some way, that the words themselves just look beautiful visually, has a lot of meaning to me. And I've actually experimented with that a lot. And I have a project coming up surrounding that practice. But I just love the way the words look together. Words have colors, words have personalities, and all of those words in some of these, and I guess the first half of this poem, seem to all mingle together in a kind of crowd of like-minded people, I guess. Mother of pearl, black, moon stately, birds among maples without leaves, death, visible, harshness. Like they all just seem to, they come together. But I adore this poem for that reason. He has many other poems, of course, in here that I could talk about for ages, but the next person I want to talk about, because I only have so much time, is the next poet is Marissa Davis. And I'm pretty pissed because I cannot buy this woman's poetry book anywhere. I don't know what the hell is going on. But Marissa Davis is an excellent poet. She's also, I believe, a linguist. She is learning different languages, and it's very obvious that she knows a few, because she really, people who are linguists, people who understand, who can speak fluently multiple different languages, they are very careful with their word selection. And Marissa Davis is the poster child for that with her poetry. And this poem that I found, it's literally a ripped out page from a poetry publication called Poetry. It's called, this poem is called If We Had Known. It's about this blizzard that hit the southeastern United States in 2009, and it left people without power for, I think, months, for a long time. And of course, people had died. And so this poem is about that. And I'll just read, I don't even have the whole poem, so I'm just going to read parts of it that I have here. But Marissa Davis, her writing seems really thick at first, but it just requires chipping away at it. If we had known, someone would have said to buy kerosene. Someone would have said, fell the trees, if only the ancients, or the birds, they have gone oddly still, hardly breathing, in those branches, clean as the bones on a glutton's plate. Or asked, what on earth do the bats want, crying like that? And why is every small life fleeing?